Okay, so I just got into a conversation with some friends of ours in Europe, and what I found was that there's a very different set of ideas as to what American houses are like compared to European houses or English houses in terms of how they're heated. So I thought I'd make a quick video on what America's like for heating and things like that. So this house is bigger than the average house for sure, but the nature of the way the heating system works is going to be consistent. So first thing to understand is we're in Utah. Most houses in Utah have basements, some of which are finished, some aren't. So we're going to go down to our basement to start with to look at the furnace room. So come on down. So this is not at all unusual in a finished basement. There'll be an actual room dedicated to the heating systems, and if you're English, this is probably going to blow you away, because I certainly was when I first saw this kind of setup. So this is what our furnace room looks like, and we've got two furnaces in here. This is not unusual for a house of this size. This house is 6,500 square feet, and we actually have 3 heating systems, one for each floor. So this is the heating system for the basement, and on a typical American home they probably just have one about this size, because this house is bigger. We also, in addition to that, for the main floor, so this is the basement one, for the main floor we have a big furnace for the main floor, and the air it's a bit noisy in here, so I'm going to shout. Probably have some trouble hearing me. The air is drawn along these 2 ducts, come down here, and they go through there and into the furnace. The furnace is gas-based and heats the air and blows it out around the house. So just to show you a little bit of what this looks like. In here you have filters, air filters, and to change the air filter you pull up this slot, and each one's different in how this works, but the principle is the same. And in here is the air filter, and you can just about see it. Now in order to change that I'm going to have to turn the furnace off and it'll go a bit quieter. So if I take this slot out, we can now look at the filter, if I can get the thing out. Put it from the bottom. And if you should be able to just see in there a little bit, you can see the sort of ducting. And this is the dirty side of the filter, and that's the clean side of the filter. Not that it looks much different. That's what a new one looks like. So you can kind of see how dirty the thing is and how it captures all the dust that goes around the house. Right, I've taken the old furnace, the old filter out, and you can see how dirty that is and compared to a new one. I'm going to put the new one in, and if you don't change these, they become less efficient and the air doesn't pass through so easy, so your whole air system. So you want to change this, well, as frequently as it gets dirty really, but usually something in the region of about once a month is on average probably about the right amount. And when you put these things in, they have a direction, so the air is supposed to go one way, and it actually shows you on there. I don't know if you can see that. So you put it so the air goes from there to there, and the air comes down here and goes into there. So literally all I've got to do to slot that in is just push it in place, and then I have a clean filter. And then just put the cover back on. Now with this particular furnace, it has 2 of these. That's one. And I go over to the other side. This one's a little bit easier to get at. And take this one out, and I expect this one will be just as dirty. No, it's not quite so dirty, but it's still ready to be changed. So that means I've got to put it in that way. So we put that in. Where did I put the cover? It's gone. Oh, there it is. Put the cover back on. And we're ready to power her up. I won't power her back up yet because there's a couple of other things to talk about to do with this heating system. These filters are for the other furnace. They're a different shape and size, and there's no standard on these. Every time you get a furnace there's a different, and when you go in and buy these things there's probably 20 different sizes, so you've got to be sure to get the right size and quality and so on. So in the furnace room we've got a bunch of other devices as well. We've got 2 hot water heaters, so these are the systems that deliver hot water for bathtubs and in the kitchen sink. Most houses have probably just got one around this size. We've got 2, which you tend to have in the bigger houses when you have more bathrooms. Where we are in Utah, the water's very hard, so we've got a water softener. You put salt in the water softener, and this is what it looks like inside. So you can probably see the salt pellets. And the water is very, very hard. 1 week without the softener and you'll have calcium deposits all over your sink, all over your glasses. It's hard to get off. It's quite incredible because the water is so hard.
So that's the Brine Tank. That's the water softener.
Yeah, that's a good point. So that's the tank where you put the salt, and that's the actual device that mixes the water to soften it. So we can just take a look around the back so you can kind of see how big this room is and all the ducting and everything. So having a kind of unfinished room with all the mechanical equipment in is the norm. This one's a little bit bigger than average, but it's fairly typical. So something else to kind of think about is sort of the discussion about saving money, being green and being economical. One of the things that, coming from England, that you begin to appreciate is Americans are becoming much more energy conscious, but there's a big difference. So with this huge house, 6,500 square feet, our large house in England was 1,700 square feet. The two were roughly the same cost, so that will kind of give you a comparison. If you heat a house like that in England, from our experience, you're probably talking about, how much, Son? You probably know the...
It was at least £100 to £150 a month in the winter.
And that's roughly what this house, more than 4 times the size, cost to heat. For example, I just checked the cost of petrol in England, gas, and it's now hit £5 a gallon. That's roughly $7.20 per gallon, and the cost of gas currently in America is
$1.35 to $1.60 depending where you are.
That's a big difference. So it was just pointed out to me that earlier I said England and Europe as if they're separate entities. My English heritage, you gotta love it. So we're now at the on the top floor, on the first floor. So Americans tend to say the first floor is the ground floor. I'm English, so I tend to think of the second floor as the first floor. So we're upstairs. That's basically it. And earlier I said that there's 3 furnaces. I took it into the furnace room where I showed you 2, and here's the third one. It's actually in a cupboard upstairs. So this is what it looks like. And I open that up, and there's the third furnace running, keeping the top floor warm. And a bit noisy again, and this has its own filter again. You can kind of see down here, as I showed you earlier. You lift that up to change the filter, which I'll probably need to do as soon as this is finished.
What's that?
And this is a humidifier. One of the problems you have in Utah. Oh, that's better. Probably hear me now. So this is a humidifier, and this is a gauge that turns up or down the amount of water that goes into the air. One of the problems that you have in Utah is that it's very, very dry. So you can often have humidity levels down at the average that I've seen is probably around 20%, 20 to 25%, which is very, very dry. So with here you can add a bit of water to the air and make it a little bit more comfortable. What you notice when you first come to Utah is that your nose will start to hurt and bleed because it gets so dry inside your nose. Particularly at night you'll feel it and you get a sore throat. So if you have one of these on and it adds a bit of humidity to the air, it just makes it a lot more comfortable. And typically you have this on in the winter when you have the heating on, because the heating also dries it. So the combination of natural dry air plus heating the air causes the air to be very dry, so you add water.